What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Inside Inter Miami. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor, joined as always by our Inter Miami beat writer, Michelle Kaufman. We are back to recap an eventful week for this team. As usual, it's always a big deal when you're bouncing from Champions Cup to MLS. But this team seems to be doing it really well, although the latest is Lionel Messi is hurt again. Didn't even travel. It must be something because for him not to travel to Argentina for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers against Uruguay and Brazil, no less. Some surprising news. But we'll recap what's going on with the Messiah. We'll talk about Inter Miami's last two wins, the one in Jamaica that advances them in the Champions Cup. Big win, a couple of big wins over Cavalier. They finished it with another 2-0 victory in Jamaica, in which Messi did play, came off the bench, gave the fans a thrill, gave them a lasting memory with a goal. And then a big showdown on Sunday night in Atlanta in front of a packed house at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, a dramatic game. Messi with a goal to equalize it after Atlanta scored early, and then a huge score from Fafa Pico, an impressive goal to say the least. We'll have some reaction from him and Javier Mascherano, and then we'll look at overall big picture through the first phase of the season. This team is undefeated through 8 matches, only 1 draw. We'll talk about some of the stars beyond just Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, and the way they've done it mostly without Messi, without Drake Callender. The defense has been great. We'll talk about the contributions of Yannick Bright, Noah Allen. They've solidified spots. And then, of course, this FIFA break for now, and then back against Philadelphia in MLS play, and then the Champions League, the Champions Cup, against LAFC is the next phase. But Michelle, what's wrong with Lionel Messi right now that he can't even go in there for La Patria for Argentina?
When he's not playing for Argentina, you know that he's not feeling well because he loves that blue and white shirt. He loves his country, loves to play for country. And it was fully expected. It was very, very surprising news out of Argentina on Monday when he was not listed on the roster for Argentina for the upcoming games, which, as you mentioned, are big ones. It's against Uruguay, big rivals. It's against Uruguay and it's against Brazil. Those are very good teams and rivals of Argentina. And the assumption was that he was going to play because he had played in the last 2 games for Inter Miami. It was like, oh, okay, he missed 3 games. That was healed. He came in the 53rd minute in Jamaica, played, almost a half, scored at the end, and then plays the full game in Atlanta, plays 90 minutes. So, and Javier Mascherano basically was saying that he was fine, that he was feeling good, and everyone's happy.
Scores in both games. Yeah.
Scored in both games.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this news on Monday that he got injured during the game, that he felt some discomfort in the adductor thigh area, and they did some MRIs on Monday morning, and that he has a mild adductor injury. It says mild. He went on Instagram and also said, I have a minor injury, so I have to take a little bit of time off. No one knows how much time. We don't know. It's one of those muscle injuries. It's going to depend how he heals. But, it is getting to be a bit of a trend, I have to say, that, he plays and then there's a pause with an injury, and then he plays, and then there's a pause with an injury. So this is something that they're going to have to watch and monitor, obviously, this season, because we're only in March. There's a lot of soccer ahead. There's a long, long season ahead. Yeah. And he's already had 2 molestias. He's already had 2 injuries, 2 strains of some kind. So it is something that's a bit of a concern. I mean, the team won without him. So, it's not that the team can't win without him. They can, and they have, but everybody loves to see him play for the kind of goals that he scored the other night, which we'll talk about.
That's interesting to think, because how alarming is this? Because they said, they have him once, no, 1 yes, 1 no. And yes, they have been able to win a little more and compensate for his absence better than they used to. But we're also talking, this is early in the season. This is early in the Champions Cup. The difficulty level is going to grow, obviously, and then the stakes are going to get higher and higher if they want to get to where they want to get to. So if this continues to be a problem, how much of a problem is it going to be down the stretch for this team?
Right. Well, let's look back at last year. We're not diminishing Lionel Messi in any way. We know he's the GOAT. We know he's the best, whatever, of all time. But last year, he didn't play for 2.5 months. Did not play for 2.5 months. And the team stayed in first place without him. The stakes were high then, too. I mean, he was on the team. They were trying to make the playoffs, all that. They did win for 2.5 months without Lionel Messi. And when he came back, they had to learn to play with him again because it was such a long, extended time that he was out. You know, I don't know. The team can win without him. I feel that this team is strong enough and deep enough that it's not like the team is going to lose all their games if Messi doesn't play. Before he had that injury break last year, I do think that was the narrative. If Messi plays, they win. If Messi doesn't play, they don't win. That's not really the narrative anymore. This team can win without him. It's just it's not as exciting when he doesn't play. They're not as superior when he doesn't play. Some of the magical moments, the magical goals that he sets up and that he scores will be missing. And obviously, financially, the ticket prices go down, the shirt sales, all of those things, the TV ratings, all of those things are dependent on him. So, it's a different Inter Miami team without him than with him. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, Jamaica won out at least. They got their moment. They got to not only see him come in and play, but then score late in that game. Cavalier hung around a little bit, tough, a PK early by Luis Suarez, but they did what they had to do. 4-0 overall on the aggregate combined for both games. And again, this team keeps its busy schedule intact. They move on to the quarterfinals. They'll face LAFC. We'll talk about that later. That's the next leg of this in early April. And then you think, Messi, like both of us thought, they saved him for Atlanta. He plays the entire game, looks fine. Actually has a great steal and score. That play was vintage.
That was Messi. Vintage. It was a beautiful, beautiful goal. And it was like, oh, he's back. I mean, he's back and he's looking good and he's playing great. And I'm not sure when that strain happened. It must have been after that, I assume. I don't know. Because he ended up playing the whole 90 minutes too. He didn't come out. So he didn't complain about it during the game. He didn't ask to come out or anything, although he rarely does. He loves to play. So, he did play the full 90, but apparently he did have some kind of discomfort in the leg, and they did the MRI the next day, and so he's out for a while. But yeah, the team looked good. The team looked good, and then Fafa Pico in that Atlanta game, Messi scores the equalizer. So the beginning was a little dicey. Atlanta was looking good actually in the beginning. They've had some big signings. $22 million player that they sign, he scores, and you're saying, here we go again. With Atlanta. Here we go again.
And Brad Guzan was stopping everything again.
Yes, Brad Guzan was scoring everything again. I mean, was making great saves. And you're saying this is a repeat, this is a replay of what happened. But then no, Messi scores the equalizer, an absolutely beautiful goal. And then, it stays even. It stays even, even though they were dominating. They had chances. He even had another chance, another good chance that didn't go in. And then at the very end, 89th minute, Fafa, who had not played for 3 weeks, he had not played. He had a hamstring injury. He went out in the first game and had been out mainly practicing on his own. He had just returned to full practice a few days before. He comes in. He's only 5'8". He's not a tall guy. And he comes in, and in the 89th minute, the ball comes to him, on a corner cross, and he heads it in, and everybody goes nuts. He ran over, and the entire team lifted him up. The coaches, the bench. It was really wonderful to see. That
was amazing because it was like a fadeaway header. Like he's falling back as he hits it. And then it was kind of like, like in baseball, those seeing eye singles that just get through the infield. It was like the defender, Guzan, everyone. It just somehow that ball got through to the far post and just inside and got in. It was incredible. And especially in the 89th minute.
Absolutely. So, he kind of threaded the needle there. 48,000 people just silenced because I thought at least they're thinking they're going to get away with a tie, and all of a sudden it's going to be a loss for Atlanta.
Yeah. So kind of a crushing, kind of deflating for them because they had all – I mean, not it's early in the season and all that, but I know that after all the moves they made, the announcers
they're way
were
down
talking
in the
about
standings.
it.
They're way
And they're hurting
in the
Yep.
standings now.
Yep.
They're hurting. They're way down near the bottom of the standings after all the money they spent and after the big upset of Miami at the end of last season in the playoffs. And Inter Miami, meanwhile, with that win, is up at the top. They're back in first place.
Back in first, yep.
They reclaim the top of the table.
Yep. And for their 10 points now, Philadelphia, which coincidentally coming up next on their MLS schedule in a few weeks, is second in the East right now with 9 points, and then the Crew and so on. But yeah, they reclaim the top, the perch for now at least that they have. But let's see what Fafa had to say about that great goal and the victory.
Fafa venía saliendo de una lesión. Físicamente, ¿cómo está y qué tan importante fue ese gol para seguir ganando confianza?
No, súper importante creo. Han sido 3 semanas muy complicadas, muy difíciles mentalmente obviamente, pero gracias a Dios tenía el apoyo de mi familia, amigos y sobre todo mis compañeros de equipo, el cuerpo técnico y médico. Así que quería recompensarlos hoy con un gol o que sea hasta salvar un gol si me tocaba. Hoy fue un gol, pero la verdad todos me apoyaron durante ese tiempo y estoy muy feliz.
Fafa, habla mucho de la unión del equipo. ¿Esa es la mística que le ha impartido el profe Mascherano desde su llegada a todos ustedes?
Sí, yo creo que entre él y también los jugadores de más experiencias y también los jóvenes, o sea, yo llegando como nuevo jugador, yo vi de una que era un grupo que se quedaba ahí en el vestuario charlando y como dije antes, pues quiero ser uno más con ese grupo porque se ve que ya era un grupo unido y hay que seguir así porque es importante tenerla en el vestuario.
Bien, una más de mi parte, Fafa, la última. Con tantos partidos MLS, con CACAF, ¿qué tan importante es para ustedes esta semana FIFA para descansar, descomprimir?
No, bien, obviamente por cualquier equipo creo que es importante cuando uno puede descansar durante el año, pero sobre todo para nosotros que tenemos muchas competiciones y bueno, vamos a aprovechar de ese tiempo para tener una pausa mental y recuperar mentalmente y físicamente y a volver a darle todo.
All right, so there's Fafa Pico, which again, always people are surprised when they hear him speak Spanish because it's not surprising. He grew up in Miami, so that's what he always tells people. What do you mean I don't speak Spanish? Of course I do. I grew up in the 305. I grew up in Miami. Everyone I played with was Hispanic, but he really does have a good facility for language because there are a lot of people who grow up in Miami and don't learn Spanish,
right.
but
he did.
Automatic,
right?
It's not automatic. He picked it up. But anyway, what he said was he was asked about the injury that he was out for 3 weeks and how did it feel to be back, and he said, that it was very tough. It was a frustrating 3 weeks, but he had so much support from his teammates and from the medical staff and the coaches. And so he wanted to repay them. He wanted to repay them with something. And so he did, with that goal. He also said that he was talking about the unity of this team, that this team is so united. He came here from Vancouver and said that he realized right away from day one that this group is very united, that they stay around chit-chatting in the locker room after practice. And he said that is something that he liked. And that so now he wants to be part of that group. He wants to be one of those people, even though he's new, one of those people in the group that's keeping everybody together. And then the last thing he said was that it's really important for every team to have some rest during these FIFA breaks. But he said, especially for our team, because we have so many games ahead of us, that it's really, really vital for this team to get mental and physical break during this FIFA break from now through the end of next week.
Yeah, and some of the veteran legs on this team too, not just Messi, obviously, but guys like Suarez and others have to stay fresh. And Suarez has played a lot in the early going too, so it's going to be interesting to see how they balance that part of it. But the team is 3-0-1 in MLS, as we said before. 7-0-1.
We were going to hear from Mascherano.
That's where I was going with that.
You're going with that. Go ahead. Go.
Go. Under Mascherano, they're 7-0-1 overall. Pretty impressive considering some of the factors. Again, Messi for only 3.5 games, but also we didn't mention the goalie because of the whole red card situation. Rocco Rios Nova had to start that game against Atlanta. Gave up the 1 goal, but that was it. So good job. But
that was his prior team. By the way, Rocco had played for Atlanta United. So he was going up against his former team. a really big game again in front of 48,000 people, a sort of revenge match, a big game, and he held his own. He did what he had to do. I mean, let's keep in mind that's the third string keeper on this team.
No doubt.
And he went out there and just allowed one goal, which was really impressive. And I have to say again, we didn't know what to expect from Mascherano as a coach at the beginning. He had never coached a professional team, had never coached an MLS, had no experience at all with this league. All he had coached was the Argentine youth national team. So there were a lot of question marks. And so far, this is actually the best start in team history. 3-0-1 is the best start in the 6 years of MLS. Yeah. That's the best start Miami's ever had without a loss in 4 games, and 7-0-1 under this coach. So he's proving himself so far as a coach.
And before we put the clip on, no red card this week.
No red card.
Snap the streak.
No red card.
Snap the infamous bad streak. So that's another positive for this team.
That's right. A good thing to point out. Yes.
Yeah. Here's Javier Mascherano speaking of this great start.
Michel, bueno, el de Leo es un gol que solo puede hacer él, el mejor jugador de la historia de este deporte. No hay más que decir, ¿no? Un jugador que tiene la capacidad de hacer los goles más lindos que uno pueda ver. El gol de Fafa obviamente nos pone muy contentos por él, sabemos que venía de 3 semanas duras porque había estado fuera, la lesión, donde él venía con un buen nivel cuando le tocó lesionarse, y la verdad que al equipo en ese sentido lo sintió porque no pudimos contar con él en muchos partidos, así que me pone muy muy contento. Fafa es un chico muy querido, ha venido a aportar su experiencia en la liga, pero con mucha humildad, trabajando en equipo, sabiendo usar los momentos en los que no lo necesitamos, así que estamos encantados con él. Y nada, Michel, espero que hoy puedas celebrar el cumpleaños de la mejor manera. ¿Es hoy la fiesta o mañana? ¿Mañana? ¿Fue ayer? Fue ayer, bueno. Así que, de nuevo, como te dije ayer, feliz cumpleaños, espero que la hayas pasado bien junto a tu familia. Y bueno, ojalá que el año que viene me puedas invitar.
You got to tell that story because you told me when I went to your party. You got to tell that story real quick.
Yeah, Javier Mascherano showing a sense of humor. We already knew that he had a sense of humor, those of us that have been dealing with him. But he heard that it was my birthday, which it was.
Happy birthday, Michelle, by the way.
Thank you. It was a big one. It was 6-0. Yes, I know. That was kind of a big one. It was a big one. So I had a little gathering of some friends and family, and he heard about it through the grapevine. And so before the game even, he had sent me a little not a video, but a recording just through the team media relations staff saying happy birthday to me and saying, hey, I heard that there's a party and you didn't invite me, and I'm a little offended. You need to invite me I didn't get invited to your party. So anyway, that was funny. He's a funny guy. He has a sense of humor. But yeah, that was the end of this clip here was him again saying, I hope that you had a wonderful birthday with your family, and maybe next year I'll be invited. As far as the soccer part of the conversation went, he talked about the 2 goals. He said that the goal from Lionel Messi against Atlanta, he said, basically shaking his head, only he could score that goal. That is a goal that only he can score. He said he is the best player of all time in our sport, and he has the capacity, the ability to score the most beautiful goals that you can see. So that's what he said about his goal. As far as Fafa's goal, he said that it made him very happy because Fafa is beloved. He is beloved by his teammates. He's beloved by the staff. He's a very endearing person. If anybody ever meets Fafa Picault, he's just a very endearing guy. So he's very popular among the team and in the locker room and with the staff. So when he scored, you could see it. It wasn't just a little celebration. He jumped up and they basically lifted him up and everybody was gathered around. And Javier Mascherano said, that they were all really happy for him because he got injured right at the beginning and he was in good form at that time. And they were sad that he wasn't able to be with them for the first part of the season in March. So it was a great thing to get him back.
Yeah, and in Michelle's defense, I will say this: this team is so busy these days with Champions Cup that it's not like they have time anyway to go celebrate a birthday party anyway. So
They definitely would have no time. They would have no time.
Next year we'll check the calendar. We'll see if they're playing in some tournament or not, or if they're actually or maybe it has to land on during a FIFA break or something where he could get to you. But speaking of that, that's exactly what this team has now. It's a little chance to exhale, at least for the players that aren't involved in the upcoming games internationally. And then back at it, March 29th at home, as we said, an important early game in the MLS standings against Philadelphia. And then, of course, a big challenge in this quarterfinal stage of the Champions Cup, LAFC. So this is the difficulty level we were talking about, amping up in this next little section of this busy juggling act that they're doing.
Yeah. One of the things Mascherano spoke about during the postgame was that, he was asked, how do you feel you're doing so far as a coach and this and that? And he said, I don't want to let my guard down at all because we have very high, lofty goals and expectations. And it's still very, very early. It's only mid-March. There's a lot still, that has to happen. He said, but he did feel good that they got through this first stretch. And that was really important. He said, especially after a very busy preseason. Remember how many games they played in the preseason. They did travel. They didn't travel all the way to the Middle East and to Asia, but they did travel to Latin America and they played games in other countries, international, which the other MLS teams don't do. Right. So they had a very busy preseason. And then they come in and they have all of these games. They played 8 games. They played 8 games in 26 days. Which is really, that's a lot. That's a lot of games. 8 games in 26 days is almost 1 game every 3 days, which no other team was doing. So he said that he did feel satisfied that they got through this first stretch. Okay, they got out of this first stretch without any losses. They got out of this first stretch as difficult as it was. He was pleased that they were able to get through it. And now he said they really do need a break. He said we need the players who are still dealing with some minor injuries, which obviously includes Lionel Messi. Now, I don't know if he knew that when he was talking to us and didn't say, or he didn't know yet that night because it was right after the game. But, he said we need time for these guys to heal. Drake Callender was on the bench in Atlanta but didn't play. So we still have not seen him in action at all. Marcelo Wygant has still been out with a hamstring injury. Robert Taylor has been out with a hamstring injury. So there are, David Ruiz now has an injury also. And Messi, of course, the biggest name on the team. So they've got some time now. The FIFA break goes through the 25th of March, which is the middle of next week. And then they have a few more days. So, they needed the week. They need this week to get. What comes next is tough. Next league game, March 29th against Philadelphia, which is having a very, very good season. They really are. So they're in second place. That's going to be a battle down here, a home game, but a very tough game. And then it's right back to CONCACAF Champions Cup against LAFC.
I mean, one of the key turnarounds of this team, and we've said it already, is defense. And what Bright and Allen and those guys have done. Again, you saw it in those games. I mean, maybe not so much in the Cavalier, but in the Atlanta game, definitely. Where, I mean, there was a game, the one where Ustadi got the red card, going back to the Charlotte game. The fact that Rocco did not really have to make a true save on a shot on goal because their defense was so good. That's what's going to need to stay consistent throughout the season. And it's been showing so far with Mascherano's guidance. Yeah,
definitely. He mentioned in particular Yannick Bright and Noah Allen. He said these are 2 guys that Inter Miami, the Inter Miami family fans should be very, very pleased with because they are both really young players who they're playing very, very well defensively. Noah Allen, again, we talked about him last week, but, getting attention from the Greek national team. He's 20 years old. A local kid, came through the academy. Yannick Bright came from the University of New Hampshire, from the college draft. I mean, a lot of people in this sport, they look down at college soccer. It's like, You're not the best players don't play college soccer. The best players
Right.
coming out of high school go play professionally, and college soccer is sort of a secondary market. You're
Minor
not going to
league,
really
kind
get
of,
any
yeah.
quality. Minor league,
Got
like
that,
a
it's got
minor
that
league.
perception, right?
It has a perception of being minor league, and they get Yannick Bright, which this one we do have to give credit to Chris Henderson, who is gone now, and his staff, but they scouted him and they liked him a lot. And he, from last year, I mean, I've been touting Yannick Bright since last year, but he really is a very, very good, very intelligent player. He has a master's degree already. He graduated already and has a degree in economics or finance or something. Very intelligent young man, and you can see it in the way he plays. And his mentor now is Sergio Busquets, one of the guys who sees the game better than anybody. And now he's already intelligent and has good field IQ, but now he's playing alongside, one of the best defensive midfielders ever. And he's playing alongside him and learning from him and getting tips from him. So Yannick Bright, the future is very bright for Yannick Bright. He's really playing well. And yes, the defense in general, when you look at the way they were last year, there were a lot of scary moments, dangerous situations. There are not nearly as many dangerous situations this year as they were last year.
Yeah, just much more organized back there, much more fluid. Not a lot of, like you said, not a lot of breakdowns. That's the biggest thing. I mean, teams are going to get chances, obviously, but not a lot of those glaring breakdowns that were just like, what are they doing? Like, what are they doing back there?
Yeah,
and so if that
absolutely.
stays consistent. Yeah.
I asked Ian Frey the other day actually about how the defense is different. How does it feel different? He said that they're just more organized. They're just more organized, and they know exactly where they're supposed to be. And he said, Mascherano tells them, positions them well. And again, Tata, he was an offensive player as a player. He was very, very focused on scoring and on the offense. And Mascherano was a midfielder, but always had more of a defensive mindset and played more of a defensive role. And so, that he's definitely bringing that expertise. I feel like, the team knew how to score and still does score, but the problem was the big gaps that they were leaving, the big spaces. And those spaces have definitely closed up, at least so far.
Right.
It's early. It's too early still to declare that this is the best team in MLS and that they're going to win MLS Cup and that they're going to win Champions League and all this, Champions Cup. But they are looking very, very good.
Yeah.
Again, they're in first place, so they're looking good. They're looking good.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of their approach and their shape and all of that, I think that's something that looks like it can be sustainable. The whole thing is going to be like, just like last year, durability of a lot of the guys, and especially through this grueling schedule this has only been a important opening stretch, but it's only a piece of what they're going to face down the stretch, especially if they're going to accomplish what they hope to accomplish. But
yeah,
we'll be back
Messi,
next.
The Messi thing, the one last thing before we close, the Messi situation is something that we're going to have to be monitoring, fans and the team, the rest of the season, because he's, proving at this point of his career that, he's going to be very selective about when he returns from injuries and stuff like that, because these muscular injuries, they are the ones that get aggravated, whether it's a hamstring, whether it's groin area, adductor. Those injuries they linger. They're tough to heal. And, he came back and we thought he was fine, and then all of a sudden pulls another muscle. So, this is something that could be an issue the rest of the season, especially with the number of games they have left to play.
And I wonder how much of it too, it's that he, let's say he plays and he's fine, but it's the bounce back. It's the next morning. It's how he feels the next day, how the body reacts at this point in his career, that it's a little bit unpredictable.
60 now. I'm 60 now. I can tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as you age, and again, in soccer years, 37, he'll be 38 in June. Yeah. That he's a very young man by my standards. But in soccer years, and for the number of games that he has played since he's 14 years old and turning professional so young, remember, this is a guy who's been playing at the highest level since he was a teenager. So he has, he started before most people started playing at this level.
Right.
So he's had a very, very long career of 20 years plus. And he's not a big guy. He's strong. His legs are strong, but it's 20 years of wear and tear on his body. So I do think it's starting to show a little bit. And he wants to, his dream is to play in 2026 for Argentina in the World Cup. And he's going to have to measure when he plays, when he doesn't play, and when he gets these minor injuries, how long is it going to take him to bounce back?
Yeah, it's funny that two things real quick that you said about him physically. Like he when he came off the field in Atlanta, he took his shirt off. He was walking shirtless, and you see him, and it's like he's fit. He's fit. He's in good shape.
He's fit.
But he's not like extremely imposing diesel. You know what I mean? Like so it's interesting how fit like he can be, even though it doesn't look like. You know what I mean? You get what I'm trying to say? Like he's not like imposing.
Well, his upper half looks thin, but his thighs. When you look at some of the action pictures, which we had mentioned to look at the photo galleries of Matthias Ochner from the Miami Herald. Some of the photos, when you look at his legs, even though he's short and his upper body is fit but slim. You know, he's slim on the upper body, but his legs are incredibly strong, and the power that he gets on the shots and everything that's all still there. It's just that we all know as you age, the recovery is longer. So yes, if you get a little tweak, and he played 90 minutes, so he played right through it. It's not like he came out of the game at any point. But like you said, the next morning, when he woke up on Monday morning, that's when they did the MRI. He wakes up Monday morning and is like, oh, ow, I did something here. Let's take a look at this. So that's something that's going to be a theme that I think, unfortunately, is going to be a theme this season.
I play pickleball, and I'm in another universe by comparison, and I wake up and everything hurts sometimes after a day that I play a lot. So I
played in a kickball. I played in a kickball league with my husband, which is even weaker. It's even a nothing sport compared to pickleball, and not even in the same universe as soccer. And I would get up from the morning after pickleball games, and from kickball games. Yeah. And I would feel, if I had kicked a ball particularly hard, I would feel it in my upper thigh. Like, wow, I really did kick that ball hard, because I feel it in my upper thigh the next day. So we can only imagine what Lionel Messi is feeling this week.
Exactly.
So I guess he needed a break, and he's getting his FIFA break.
And a good and a fair point to bring up, like you said, about the balancing act, not just within the Inter Miami, but also the fact that they're going to prioritize nation too. I mean, they were hoping to get him for these Argentina games. And I honestly thought that was why a lot of this rest plan might have subtly been too, maybe because of that. And now look, he's out for this part of it. So that when that comes up in the future, that's also going to have to be something to monitor, some kind of consideration. Like, oh, he's got national games coming up, might scale it back on this end. So
we'll see what happens. Well, I was thinking that we'll probably take a FIFA break also next week, because they're not playing. They're not going to practice again until they're not going to practice again for us to see until after the 25th of March. So we may take a FIFA break ourselves and come back to you after this next game against Philadelphia and talk about that game, and then what's coming up with CONCACAF Champions Cup, and then obviously recap how is Messi doing and the other players. But the big question is going to be, coming off the FIFA break, is he going to come back and start practicing, or is he going to need more of a break?
Yeah. Well, we will be back to talk about that. We appreciate everybody watching us on YouTube or MiamiHerald.com. Check out anything. Michelle will have the latest on Messi or the team or anything else that goes on at MiamiHerald.com as usual. So until then, for Michelle Kaufman, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks for watching Inside Inter Miami.
And we will see you. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Keep watching and keep sending comments on YouTube. We love those.